More than 2,000 years ago, Aristotle believed that motion was caused by prior motion. But if that's the case, what caused the prior motion? It must have been a prior motion. But if that's the case, again, what caused the prior motion? It must have been another motion. And so very quickly you have an infinite regress in motion, and that troubled Aristotle. He solved it with his prime mover or unmoved mover. It's about as close as Aristotle got to a deity. It wasn't much of a deity, but it was an entity that started motion off and allowed Aristotle to avoid an infinite regress in motion. Now, Aristotle also had an infinite regress concern about creation. We have this universe, it must have been caused by something, must have been created by something, right? Well, if that's true, then what caused or created that creator? You have an infinite regress in creation. And so Aristotle solved that with an eternal universe. For Aristotle, it was uncreated. The universe has always existed. It is eternal. So a couple of infinite regress problems that Aristotle faced and solved in different ways. Fast forward to the 18th century and David Hume. Now, we've looked at Hume earlier in this sequence. We saw that Hume he's kind of a collector of arguments. He had a battery of arguments that he arranged. We saw his argument against miracles. He also argued against the natural theologians with the anthropomorphic warning. He also made another argument from the problem of evil against natural theology. If you think you have all this evidence for a creator in creation, well, what about all the evil in creation? The world seems to have been designed to embitter the lives of its inhabitants. So the problem of evil. Hume made another argument against the natural theologians, and that was the infinite regress. Let me read to you from David Hume here. How therefore shall we satisfy ourselves concerning the cause of that being, whom you suppose the author of nature? Is it not arbitrary to stop at the first creator? And if we stop and go no further, why go so far? Why not stop at the material world? How can we satisfy ourselves without going on ad infinitum? And after all, what satisfaction is there in that infinite progression? The infinite regress problem. The natural theologians were forced into this infinite regress, according to Hume. But Hume's argument can be deceptive. It seems like it's just airtight logic, but it isn't. It's a theological argument. Hume's infinite regress argument entails the belief, the theological position that an uncreated God is not possible. If not, the argument fails. If an uncreated God is possible, then you're not forced into any infinite regression. For Hume's infinite regress argument to work, there must be no such thing, no possibility of an uncreated creator. Uncreated God can't be possible. It's a required premise, and it is theological. It is a theological premise. A hard and fast premise required by the argument, strictly theological. Now, today, you do see this infinite regress argument occasionally in the literature. Let me show you an example from Mark Ridley's evolution textbook. He writes, "Omnipotent beings are themselves well-designed, adaptively complex entities. The thing we want to explain has been built into the explanation. Positing a God merely invites the question of how such a highly adaptive and well-designed thing could in its turn have come into existence." The infinite regress argument, Mark Ridley. Let me show you another example from John Horgan. John Horgan is a great science writer, and he had a piece a few years ago in Scientific American about the origin of life problem. It was entitled, "Psst, don't tell the creationists, but scientists don't have a clue how life began." This is a very interesting article. And Horgan did what scientists, what evolutionists are reticent to do, and that is he admitted to the problems with the origin of life problem. Not only was it not proven, not only is it not a fact, as evolutionists had been claiming, but in fact there are big problems, significant scientific problems with the origin of life problem. Now, that made Horgan look a little bit sympathetic to creationism, and he didn't want that. So in order to show his street cred, he appealed to the infinite regress argument. Let me read to you what he says here. Creationists are no doubt thrilled that origin of life research has reached such an impasse, but they shouldn't be. Their explanations suffer from the same flaw. What created the divine creator? So you see this from time to time in the blogs and the articles, the popular literature and textbooks such as Ridley's, the infinite regress argument. Going back to Hume, and you can trace it back to Aristotle, the problem of the infinite regress itself. It's not an airtight logical argument. It doesn't come from science. There is no scientific experiment you can perform, no theory or mathematical derivation you can perform to build this argument. It entails and relies on theology. Religion drives science, and it matters.